the layout and everything, the photography is just as much of an art form. And I think that's what really excites me about it. I love figuring out what is the best way to share this, the best light, the composition and stuff like that. And I will say something that happened several times, it was always men who would comment or send me messages saying, you're not a real artist. You just focus on, the decorations and things like that. If your art was better, you wouldn't have to focus so much on this. And I'm like, it's marketing, man.
Hi there, Josie Lewis here. In today's conversation, I'm chatting with printmaker Aftyn Shah, the creator of the Instagram page Rise and Wander. I've been following Afton for years and have always loved her beautiful prints and her gorgeous storytelling on her social page. In this conversation, Afton shares about the aftermath of a car accident, which caused a brain injury that impacted her so much she had to leave her job. Her physical therapist told her the best thing that she could do was to make art. So for the first time in her life, she made art. In this conversation, you'll hear her talking about what she did to recover from that brain injury. She'll discuss why Instagram really worked for her, how to handle the critical people we encounter both online and in life. She tells the story of her very first art sale to a stranger and how slow and steady she has built up a successful business selling her prints. Before we jump in, I want to mention that I have been a big fan of Instagram for artists. I still think it's the best way for artists to connect with our future fans and collectors. I have built up my own page to over 500,000 followers, and I have become able to be a full-time artist selling my art because of Instagram. I take Instagram very seriously, and I put together a report about what successful artists do on the platform. It's called 7 Habits of Highly Successful Instagrammers, and you can get it at josielewis.com/habits. It's completely free and it'll help you. And now here's the conversation with Aftyn Shah. Well, hello, Afton. I'm so excited to have you here with me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited. I've been looking forward to this.
Oh, yay. Well, as I was telling you just a moment ago, I've been following you for I don't know, years maybe, because your account, your Instagram feed is so beautiful. And I believe you are the person who introduced to me the concept of the flat lay back when people did flat lays.
I refuse to let it go. This was 10 years ago, right? And I just remember we were living in St. Louis at the time. We were in DC, my husband and I, and we're just jumping right into it. Like, I had a car accident that led to a brain injury and I couldn't go back to my work consulting. So we moved to St. Louis because there was an amazing neurologist there who focuses on like that blunt trauma to the brain. But we had this little house and it was our starter home and it was fantastic. But there was no space for me to have anything anywhere. It's a kitchen table thing. And everything that was on Instagram at the time. And I wasn't big into Instagram or any social media. I came from the intelligence community where we didn't really have social media. You didn't want to put anything out there. And so I didn't have an established account, but I was a new mother. I was so lonely. And I started doing artwork as part of my art therapy.
Wait, are you telling me that you were in the CIA?
No.
Were you a secret agent?
No, I was
Let me have my imagination that was what happened. Okay.
Oh, no, it was the DIA. It was the Defense Intelligence Agency. But that was, you locked your phone in a box as you entered the building. You go into like a secret compartmentalized part of the building. You don't have your phone. I was not on my phone ever, I think about that and I'm like, wow, like nobody could get in touch with you. It was a completely different world. And I kind of miss it, not the work, but I miss that part of it. I'm like, oh, maybe I should just get a lockbox and like lock my phone away in the morning. Oh, what I was saying was everything on social media was these gorgeous traveling accounts, or at least that's what I followed. The algorithm showed me beautiful outdoor accounts, gorgeous cabins, bright and light and airy, just gorgeous. And I did not have that. And I was like, oh, I'm feeling bad about myself. My kid is on my hip. I'm trying to make things. And so we went on a lot of hikes and I collected a lot of treasures. And so I started gathering the treasures and I would put them around because that was the inspiration for a lot of the work. And then when we left St. Louis for Pennsylvania, and once again, we were in a rental. So I couldn't have a studio of any sort. And I wasn't pursuing the art thing. So it was like, I'm not gonna have a dedicated space. But I did have an ugly white IKEA table that was horrible. It was scratched up. And so I put a, what are they called? Like a cutting board, a butcher block on top of it. And that was my area. And the way that I filmed was I had two empty binders on either side, like standing on their side, open, and then an extra curtain rod that the landlord had left. And I would balance my phone on it. And so there were so many times that my phone fell into the ink because, you're shaking the table as you're burnishing and everything. But then, and I had somebody come over at one point and they're like, oh, I thought you had a tripod. And I was like, oh, that's way too expensive. Like, that's out of my budget. I can't do that. But that worked. And that remained that was my way of filming for a good 2 or 3 years. And I still occasionally, if I want to get a really wide shot, I will set up multiple chairs and get out the curtain rods or pieces of, leftover timber or something. And I will set up this like jerry-rigged system. But that's how it all started, was like, I was in a corner with a bunch of boxes and I was like, well, I can show the process. And I would have my hands like kind of in a sort of like dancer's hands way and try to show my thought process behind the work the best way that I could without having an aesthetic place.
I see those studios in the south of France and I'm like,
that's really pretty.
So
or like the huge windows. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh,
I'm in the suburbs.
I know. It's just, I live in Minnesota. I have a walkout basement. Like, it is what it is.
It's magical to me.
So can you tell us just about your work a little bit so people know what we're talking about here?
I have no formal training. Like I said, I'd had a car accident and it affected my language center, which was what I focused. I was a strategic communications person and I had trouble. It was an ego hit. Like it really affected me deeply. Like I felt like I couldn't do my job anymore. I just actually couldn't put the words together. And I will never have that language facility back. Obviously it's gotten much better with therapies and things like that and just time as the pathways reconnect. But one of the things my rehab guy at the time was like, you need to do something that you have no ego about, that you just need to keep your hands busy. And he's like, just go to Michael's, go to the art store, pick up something brand new so that you can be a beginner and you don't care about it. And I went and I picked up all the speedball stuff, from Michael's, and I went home and I made the ugliest, I wish I would have actually had it here. I made the ugliest Valentine. I started then and I haven't stopped. Like I then just got deeper and deeper into it and started using linoleum and trying out all the different things. And it took over part of our dining room at the time. And I absolutely loved it. And a lot of it was, it's focused on the outdoors, because that was the other thing the rehab guy said. He's like, you need to get outside. Because I had having the accident when I was pregnant, and then there was a lot of PTSD with it. Like I was actually afraid to leave the house. Which sounds, looking back, I'm like, what was wrong with that young woman, But I just felt like the world was out to get me. And again, it sounds paranoid now, but when you're in it and you've got the hormones going and everything, it's like, I have to protect this baby. And so he's like, you need to get outside and learn that the world is not out to get you. So Rise and Wander comes from him being like, get up and get outside. I don't care how you do it. Go on a hike, take your baby, whatever. And so a lot of my work, especially in the beginning, was outside. It was just the outdoors. That was all I knew. That was what I was around. I mean, we would go on like 5-mile hikes and I would have my baby strapped to me and he would just be asleep. And it's like, that's how I felt comfortable. So it's block printing with a lot of outdoor elements. And I've moved back into kind of like the things that I was interested in as a child with folklore and magical elements. And now I'm kind of merging both of them. But after block printing and just being in art stores, I picked up painting and drawing and all of those other things as well. So there's a little bit of everything.
Yeah. And, from my just exposure to your feed, I never ever would have guessed. I mean, you have such utility and such expertise. I would have assumed you're a college professor. I would
I
have
wish
thought,
I
oh, she's been through 1,000 courses and she has a PhD in printmaking. Like because you're really skilled and you're very very good at communicating what you're doing. It's one of your superpowers for sure.
well, that makes me feel good because yeah. There's so much more that I need to learn or have formal learning around because a lot of it is, just searching on the internet or reading books. Like there's some amazing books. And I do get obsessive about things when I first start them. And so that's part of it, I think, is I just wanted to consume every bit of media I could. But no, I never took an art class. When my one art class that I took was a freshman in high school, and I took it, and the art teacher, one of the projects that she was looking at, she was like, "Don't waste my time. Don't waste your time. Don't take this class again." And I was like, "Okay, never mind. This isn't for me."
What course was that again?
It was just like an introductory art class. What are you in high school? Like 15, 14? And I've since learned through a good friend of mine, she's like, no, she's a tough cookie. Like she didn't handle people messing around. And now admittedly, it was a painting of like the tempera paint or whatever of a goat flying through space with like burning trees in the background. I don't remember what the assignment was, and I don't know why that's what I painted, but you know what? I still have it and I think it's cute.
So interesting. I feel like a lot of people have had incredible art teachers and mentors that have been so instrumental in helping to encourage them and make their work better and expose them to new ideas. And I have so many teachers like that. And I think for every story there is about an excellent teacher, there is a story about someone who seems that their joy was squashing people's dreams.
Yeah.
And it's really when you're 14 or 15, like it really can cause lifelong harm. And sometimes as a parent that's like, well, that's not the responsible thing to do, or so then I call them art scars. When we have these formative experiences where a little heart is like, I think I want to make something, and then someone's like, yeah.
No, that was like, so my household was not very supportive of, I mean, I shouldn't say that. My mom, she bought me the paints and things like that, and it was just whatever, but it was a very blue collar background, and I was the first to go to college, and it was just like, no, you're going to do something. And it is not going to be fiddling around with all this creativity. Like I was a big writer in high school. And at one point my parents were just like taking the notebooks away from me and like told me, stop getting lost in your little stories. And it was just like, okay, guess this isn't what we do. And it's hard when you're that young. They are your source of information a lot of times. So it's like, this is what I need to do.
And it's so interesting. Another part of your story that really rings true, that I've heard, it happened to me and it's happened to so many people that I know, is they encounter some sort of life-altering event, often a tragedy, a loss, injury, various things that happen to us. And that is the catalyst for them to be like, you know what? Yeah. I'm going to make some art. Like I'm going to do what my heart's telling me or my doctor is telling me to do, which is brilliant.
No, it's just so deep inside. I feel like every child is whether they're good at it or not. Like I look at my kids, I have two boys and they're 6 and 9, and they just want to create, whether it's with Legos or drawing. My 9-year-old builds these elaborate things out of cardboard. They're inventions is what he calls them. And he builds these things. And as an adult, I'm looking at it and I'm going, that is ugly and useless. But it's the creativity, and he's excitedly telling me about it. And I hope that I never am in a bad mood and I'm like, oh, don't show me this right now, or whatever it is. I hope that we always encourage it, even if it's ugly, because we have that drive to create as humans. Like I think it's such a human thing.
Yes. And there's nothing, I mean, if I do my job right as a parent, helping my daughter to think outside the box, to be more creative, to do things that might fail, to take risks, to try ideas. That's what I want, whatever career she ends up in, if she's a creative or if she's a lawyer, I don't care, but I want her to be, able to be expansive and open, and creativity can do that for us.
Well, and also to be bad at something first too, because that's the other thing is if you're constantly looking for that perfection and creativity, like it teaches, I mean, I've made so much bad art, and it just teaches you, like, it's one thing, it's one lesson. It's like, okay, this is horrible, but what did I learn? What can I take to the next thing, and iterate and constantly pivot and figure it all out. I think it's important.
It's interesting to me too that your medical person told you to pick something that you don't have an ego in and try that. Like literally the prescription was don't care if it sucks. Like if
possible.
if it fails, then just be fine, and I've talked to people who have this creative desire. They're very high achieving people. So the thought of like picking up a paintbrush and making some art, even though it's what their heart wants, their soul is telling them, you want to do this, you want to play with color. They're afraid because they know they're not going to be excellent at the get, like they're not going to come out of the gate being an amazing phenomenon. They're going to be awkward, and they're going to have to learn skill, and they're going to have to, gain expertise, and it just takes a while. And so then they don't. The tragedy is they're not willing to fail. They're not willing to be an amateur. So they just don't do it at all. Even it's like, put it in your notebook. You don't have to show it to anybody. And they don't want it. They don't want to personally find out that they're not good at it.
No, or it's like we feel like something is watching, like that panopticon idea of just like something is watching, or someone's going to see it or something, and it's a hit to our egos when we try something and we stink at it. Like I actually started, I've never been big into sketchbooks. Like I'll get the books, and I love hoarding books. I have so many notebooks, but I often don't put much in them because I don't want it to be imperfect, right? Like it has to be a beautiful sketchbook that I can share, whether it's with social media or friends or whatever. I just want to have something beautiful. And I'm trying this year. I'm like, no, just make the ugly thing. And I'm not great with people in particular, right? Like block printing, it's easier because I can sketch out 20 different versions until I have the right one. And then I can put that one on the block and it'll look good. But when it's in a notebook, it's harder. And so I'm trying to kind of like illustrate some stories and things like that I have in my head. And the first thing that comes out is the first thing. And sometimes they have some really awkward faces or some really awkward hands, whatever. And I think it's important for even us to just remember it's okay to be bad. And it doesn't take away from the practice or from the artwork, the body of artwork as a whole either.
Well, and that was going to be my next question was, so you started off with this like ego disconnect, like just be creative and don't care what happens. But then now down the line, you have a business, you sell your work, you have a big Instagram account. Was there a point when the ego came back?
Oh yeah, the ego was there the whole time. No, like that. And you become more discerning, right? Like I'm pretty sure I was very pleased. It was a block print. The first thing was like a block print. I think it had a buffalo on it. And I'm sure, I almost guarantee I looked up some illustrator's buffalo. Like this was not from a photo. It was probably me copying the line art or whatever. Like I never sold it, and it's fine to do that. I always tell people, like, if you want to practice with somebody else's artwork, fine, don't sell it. So just to clarify that, but I'm pretty sure I was very happy with it. But then as I went along, like now I look at it, I'm like, oh, those are some really messy lines. But as you learn and get better, you start to you're just more discerning. And I think the ego kind of grows with that. I remember the first time I was so pleased with a piece, and I don't sell it anymore. I think I have it as a reproduction. It was a lake or something. It was obviously a landscape because that's all I did at the time. But I remember being like, this is it. I feel comfortable selling things now. Like this can be sold. And I think it was probably about a year in, and I'd already started selling things. But once that piece was there, I was like, this is the direction. I love this. And I started becoming a lot more intentional with how I created things and like wanting kind of a cohesive brand or body of work.
So how did that develop? So you started doing the prints, and then at some point you started using Instagram. And is
Yeah.
Instagram your main social, or do you use other platforms? How does the intersection of business and social media fall together for you?
So it's definitely my main social. And like I said, I wasn't huge. I think before we moved to St. Louis, I had maybe like 5 posts, and it was, my husband and I, our first baseball game together. And there was a little bit more usage after the car accident because I was so isolated. Like I really didn't leave that apartment. We were in a condo in Old Town Alexandria in Virginia, like outside DC, and I barely left. Um, and so it started more as like a connection with just family, like, oh, this is what I'm doing, and then my son. Um, and so creating gave me something to share because my life was pretty, I think I shared some pictures of challah bread, and stuff like that. Like, what was I eating for breakfast? And what is my son doing? Um, and once I started it, that was the organic thing, is I started sharing the artwork and I loved sharing it. To me, the layout and everything, the photography is just as much of an art form. And I think that's what really excites me about it, is I love figuring out what is the best way to share this, the best light, the composition and stuff like that. And the more attention that got, the more I did it, and it just kind of fed off of each other. And I will say something that happened several times, and I'm not generalizing, it was always men who would comment or send me messages saying, you're not a real artist. You just focus on, the decorations and things like that. Like if your art was better, you wouldn't have to focus so much on this. And I'm like, it's marketing, man. Like any marketing professional is going to tell you it's the telling the story around the outside of, where does this come from? What is the whole idea? Like I like including the tools and everything. To go back to your question, I'm rambling now. Instagram, because of the visual nature of it, was always the primary social outlet for it. I never could get into Twitter. It was always, or any of the other ones. But what are TikTok. I can't get into TikTok. I think I'm too old. I don't know. That's not true. I know people, that's an excuse. But it's almost like this is the fear of failure. It's the perfectionism coming in, but I just feel like I can't start over.
Well, every platform. I mean, I'm on a lot of platforms, and this year I've decided I still post to other platforms, including TikTok, where I have 2 million followers. But as far
Wow.
as I can tell, I've never gotten any of my followers to leave the platform and visit my website, or certainly not buy anything, so it's kind of like it ends up being like a vanity metric that doesn't serve me. And so and then I don't know that I'm engaging correctly with the platform because I just kind of cross post because I don't have time to make content for every platform. So I cross post, but I think that because I'm in Instagram a lot, I know the culture and I understand my community and my audience, and I have curated my feed to pay attention to the things that I want to pay attention to. And when I jump into a different platform, the algorithm doesn't know me, so it feeds me a lot of stuff that I don't is not relevant to me and that I don't want to see. And then I don't understand the culture of TikTok, and there's trends in there that I imagine when I just post my dumb TikTok or my dumb Instagram video, they're like, old lady,
This is not what we do.
is not what we do. Like I'm missing cultural signals just because I don't have the time to be in there to learn them. So you can only do what you can do. For everything you say yes to, you say no to a lot of other things. So it seems like Instagram works for me. It sounds like it's working for you too.
Do you use YouTube? Because that's something that I would love to get into, specifically because the videos are so short now on Reels and things, and you want to kind of please the algorithm and everything. But I also have a fairly large group of people who are saying, can't you go back to sharing the long form? And I'm like, oh, that's gonna, ding me on the algorithm over here. But what if we did something separate? And like, I'm not looking to have some sort of huge following, but just something that I can point people to rather, and say, you can go over here if you want to see those longer videos.
Yeah, I mean, so I am on YouTube, and I think if I had any regret of something that I thought about doing 6, 7 years ago was to like focus on the YouTube. but I didn't, because making long form horizontal video is just it's a different skill set. It takes a long
Yeah.
time. And once again, you can only say yes to so many things. And it was like, I do not have time to make 5-minute videos right now, although the thing I have made videos, I have a pretty big library there, and there's videos from 6 or 7 years ago that still get comments and still get views, which is certainly not the case with Instagram. So the thing that's great about YouTube, in a way you could use it, would be if you were doing something like tutorial light, where it's like you're showing the whole real time process, or it wouldn't be the whole, I mean, that would be hours, but you could limit it to 5 minutes or something, and then you're just doing longer sections where people could be like, oh, that's how she does it.
Yeah.
That could be a solution. I've thought about doing that too, because I of course have the footage. It's just editing it and putting it into something that will make sense. And so I have not capitalized on YouTube, but it's not too late. I think
Yeah,
we can both do it.
that's what we, like you said, you have the footage. It's just, and someone was telling me, I don't know if this is true, so it might be wrong. But that on the app, you can do the vertical video versus the horizontal. And so truly we have so much footage, right? Like I keep all my videos. My phone is constantly telling me that you need to empty this. But I just think it could be a lot of fun and a way to connect with some people, or just deepen that connection with the part of your audience that does want to know more.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's, I mean, another thing that I have on my list of like, well, so I
At
can
some
start
point.
doing this.
Yeah.
So, it's always a balancing act of figuring out like, because eventually Instagram will probably lose market share. It
Yeah.
hasn't happened yet. Everybody keeps saying, oh, Instagram, but it's
Every
like,
year.
every
Yeah.
year they say it's over and it still isn't, so and Facebook might not even be really over. Facebook has a different character and culture, but there's still far more people that use Facebook every day than any other social platform. So it's like there's ways, I think, to use everything, and it's a question of following the path that's working. And so for
Yeah.
you and I, it's Instagram seems to be working really well. And then we've been at it for so long that I imagine both of us have pretty curated audiences, because people have been sticking with us and watching things emerge and the art grow and
Change and yeah.
change. And so tell me, I do not remember when you first started making video. Was that early in the process, or when did you start doing that?
It was. So I loved video from the beginning. I feel like it was as soon as they had it available. I was like, okay, let's do this. And again, it was filmed on my very precarious setup with the binders and everything. But I loved it. And I think it was limited to a minute, if I remember correctly. And I didn't get into, it was Reels though that forced me to think about editing, which I kind of am appreciative of, because it was always just a time lapse pretty much, or just a short straight on video of carving or something like that. Reels has forced creativity, which I am thankful for, even if it's a pain in the butt now sometimes.
So what is your setup now? So you used to have your phone balanced precariously.
Yeah.
So now what do you do?
So I had a really good setup in Pennsylvania. I want to talk about that first because I was so impressed with myself. I had a table, with actual table legs, and I went to the hardware store, and I don't know the proper name of it, but it's like the shelving, the bars that go vertically that have the little holes in them. And I got the zip ties and zip tied those to the back legs of the table. And then I could put a shelf in at whatever height that I wanted it, and I could move it around. It was fantastic. I don't have a table like that here. We moved in July. And so I've been using the Canvas Co. Desk thing that hovers over. And I have one of the original ones, and I think I either need to invest in something else or get their more updated one, because it is falling apart. Nothing stays quite right. So in some of my videos, if they're all the same shot more or less, it starts to kind of sink. It changes slightly, and I'm like, oh, that's not ideal.
Oh, that's funny. I've tried I feel like every tripod and every desk lamp and every, like thing known to man. I use big fancy cameras. I use my phone. And I once got one of those the flexible arm kind. It has like a little clamp that goes onto your desk, and then it has this like bendy, twisty, thing, and
Like
then
a
like a
little
little phone,
animal.
right? A
Yeah.
little phone thing on the end of it, so you clip in your phone, and then you could kind of direct it where you want it to go. But when I found out, I thought it was working, and then when I went to edit the video, of course, with time lapse, you see every little bump and jostle. And so basically I was just watercoloring in the video. So it wasn't like I was really being aggressive with the table or something, but just my little bit of bumping the table as I was watercoloring, the whole frame was
Oh
just like,
man.
oh my gosh. So I don't recommend, I don't
Also,
recommend those tripods.
I think it's best to have something that is not attached to the table you're working on. And I am kind of rough, like especially when I'm burnishing and stuff. I want something that's not attached.
I'm also curious about the intersection with you hit a point where you're like, I can sell these. So how did that evolve as you were building out your website or building a website at all, and then, making it possible to sell your work?
That time was so just messy, very amateur. But I decided to make a Squarespace, one of those kind of template websites. And I kept it minimal, we'll say that, so that it wasn't too bad. It didn't look like the old GeoCities from the 90s, but it was mostly family and friends who purchased, and God bless them. I love them. Like, I just remember some of my husband's coworkers would purchase things and everything. And I was using subpar materials. Like, I think I was using just craft paper from the art store, and also acrylic non-archival ink. Yeah, God bless them. I don't know what that artwork looks like today, especially if they have it in direct sunlight or anything like that. But slowly, I'm trying to even think when I first got a sale that I didn't know them, and I was floored. It was at least a year in. Like the first year, I did not make much. It covered the website and the tools and materials and stuff like that, but I wasn't thinking about the time. And I used to do commissions, and I remember there was one commission that I took. Oh, and I cringe, and I use it as a horror story for newer artists, where I think I charged her $40. And I want to say it took 12 hours. And I was just like, oh my gosh, the stupidity. And this is somebody who has like a background in, I wasn't a business major or anything, but I did work in that environment, like understood accounting and everything. But I was so self-conscious and not confident in my work. It was like, well, this isn't really valuable. This isn't worth anything. My time isn't worth anything. It's fun to create. And now, oh my gosh, I would never do that. But I started putting it online, and the mailers, I was just using whatever I could find at an office supply store, or repurposing boxes and all of that. It was just, I look back, I'm like, that's how it started. That's how it needed to start. Low overhead, didn't buy anything in bulk, because who knows if it was really going to work out. And then, you start to, oh, okay, I'm confident that I can buy 100 mailers and I will sell 100 things. And then you're buying 200 mailers and 500 mailers. And it's like, okay, this is a real thing that's happening. There were quite a few people who would message me and say, do you have an Etsy? I don't want to purchase through your website, which probably means it really didn't look professional in retrospect. But they were just much more comfortable. They felt that they had more protection and security, because I had so many people, and I think it was maybe a little bit earlier on, and people were worried I was stealing their credit card, or how was I got a lot of messages. How are you, keeping credit card information secure? And I'm like, well, that's all through Squarespace. And is it Stripe or whatever the point of purchase is. So that was the reason that I had Etsy, and I did not like it. I don't like seeing anybody take fees from my work. And it works fantastically for some people. But I do feel like once you are able to, you have your own newsletter and things like that, and you can market on your own, I think it's better to have your own stuff. That's my personal belief. I know some people are diehard Etsy fans. Fantastic for them. It just wasn't for me. Like, especially once you really start selling and you see the fees adding up, I couldn't handle it.
Yeah, that's kind of where I fall too. I tell, artists that I coach that Etsy a lot of times if you compliment someone on their thing, like, wow, what a cool thing. Oh, thanks. I got it from Etsy. It's like, not, I got it from Aftyn Shah or I got it from
Yeah.
Josie Lewis. It's like Etsy takes the credit and the fees, and they change their fees all the time, and they have a lot of rules, and there's things about shipping. And I think what Etsy can do, especially if, someone is like, I think I have some people that want to buy some stuff. I've got like 6 buyers, and I'm not ready to like build a website, because that's intimidating to build the commerce website and figure out how to create a product listing and figure out how to take payment and figure out how to do a shipping something. It's complicated, and it's not, you could do it in a couple of days, you could set it up, but it feels very overwhelming. So Etsy, right, Etsy can kind of help you through. It's like sell your art light. You can use Etsy to kind of ease in, to just learn some of the basics of what you need to do. And but like you, I think I'm a big fan of controlling everything. I think consumers are so comfortable by, throwing their credit card, out there and buying something from a website, spending a lot of money for something from a person somewhere. And
And
this
just
is,
hoping it works out.
and yeah, well, I think that there's just trust and faith that it works out, because it
Yeah.
normally does. Yeah. And I've noticed from your channel, and this could be just because I'm only seeing one of every 10 posts because algorithm, but
Yeah.
what I've noticed is I'm seeing your face more.
I'm trying, man. So I turned 39 last week, and aging, it's just, I'm trying to become more comfortable with it. Like, I'm fairly confident, but there's still days where I'm like, I don't want to be seen. Like, this isn't how I used to look 10 years ago, and there's a lot more grays. And I love my gray hair, but I also will still get the occasional mean comment.
Unbelievable.
Oh my God. I'm like, who are you guys? Or I used to get a lot of comments on my hands, because that's all I would show. People would be like, your hands are creepy. And like, thanks, guys. Just, or, you need a manicure, stuff like that. People will always feel the need to comment. So it's just, I'm trying to put myself out there, because I think it's important for us to see all different types of people, and people like to see the face, right? Behind the artwork. So
Indeed. And my hat is off to you, because it does take tremendous bravery, especially aging. As an aging woman, there's always somebody that's like, you should brush your hair. And it's like, and inevitably I film myself, and I notice I have a big, like, I don't know, stain on my shirt, like,
something.
like her hair.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh my gosh. But I just have to do it. It's just like, nope, I'm going to bring my face out there, and
I'm
it's
a
vulnerable.
human.
I'm a
Yeah.
human. I'm not a supermodel. I'm just a normal middle-aged mom. So
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I'm just like, what do you expect? And now with all of the AI stuff, I think that's also part of it, is seeing, I don't know if you follow some of the influencers who talk about that a lot, like the AI just making everything look so perfect. And I'm not talking about the artwork, I'm talking about like the people. And I'm like, let's have some real people. Like, let's just see the hair out of place and the eye bags and all the
right, and
things.
no filters, and
Yeah.
yep. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Okay, well, where can people find you?
So my website is riseandwander.com. And I always have to specify, it's not wonder. Like, oh, I'm wondering about something. It's wander. You're wandering outside. So riseandwander.com. And then on pretty much every social, it's just Rise and Wander. All one word.
Awesome. Well, I'll be putting all that in the show notes as well for people to click right through. So thank you so much for this incredible conversation. So many juicy tidbits. Loved it.
Thank you so much. I'm just, yeah, thank you. I love seeing all of your videos. So this is like a little bit of a fangirl moment for me.
Oh, mutual fan club right here. Mutual fans. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today and listening to our conversation. I hope you got some great nuggets out of that and some good tidbits. Please do go check out Aftyn Shah's work on the Instagram. You will not be disappointed. It's beautiful. Thanks again for being here, and I'll see you in the next episode.